This video is sponsored by MusicBed. Last week concluded our 10-month stint of shooting our first ever documentary, and a feature-length documentary at that. We shot it all on the Canon C70. Nearly every month this year, we've been following Joe Greer, documenting his life, work, and rekindled obsession with running, namely the marathon distance. The events of this year were a build to Joe's peak race in Sacramento, the California International Marathon. The 6 of us from Creative Club went out for the race, and another handful of volunteers assisted us on the course. YouTube legend Chris Chu, Joe's coach Chase, and Ryan Booth. Yes, that Ryan Booth. I have no idea how it happened this way, but I'm so grateful it did. Today I'm going to chat about the C70, my use of it this year in a documentary setting, amongst some other various settings. Log to 10-bit 422. This is incredible for weddings and events and even just small commercial work because the codec isn't super bloated and it gives you that log 2 curve, which Canon admits themselves is their best log curve. It has the same DGO sensor as the C300 Mark III, which helps with noise in the shadows and retaining highlights in the hot spots of your image, giving you a cleaner and wider dynamic range. Internal ND. No more screwing ND onto the front of your lens element or matte box. You just get to toggle through 10 stops of ND within the camera. With a firmware update, the C70 got RAW ST and RAW LT, 2 compressed forms of RAW, so you can change your color in post and get 12-bit color out of both. It's about 1/4 to 1/8 the size of the Canon C200 RAW Lite, which I was using before, shooting about 1 terabyte of footage each wedding. Canon C70 can be functional without being built out. So like a Red Komodo, you need a monitor and a V-mount and all these bells and whistles, but the C70 right out of the package can be used for something like a wedding, corporate work, even commercials, or a documentary, you know? You might be asking, why are you doing this segment in the fridge? Because I'm surrounded by other things I like. Something traditional filmmakers might scoff at, the autofocus. It's incredible. Face detection and eye detection with new firmware update. It was insane for this documentary because Joe's a runner, and following him on rollerblades or a boosted board or an electric bike, it's just one less thing I had to think about. I didn't have to hire an AC to pull focus. I didn't have to pull focus myself. I just relied on the autofocus for getting the shot 90% of the time. Especially paired with RF glass, it's a pretty foolproof system. Having the RF mount, haven't utilized it all that much yet. Outside of using RF glass, which is incredible, I love the 15-35 and the 50mm from Canon, but I could also adapt to PL lenses, which is industry standard for a lot of things in the commercial world and narrative world. The camera has incredible preamps for audio, so every time I keep the NTG4 on the camera or boom it for interviews, it's a super clean, usable audio that you get straight out of camera. Lastly, it's just an insanely easy image to work with. Pretty much shoot the log 2 curve the entire time I use it, and paired with Gamet's log 2 Rec 709 conversion and my 606 LUT pairing, I've pretty much dialed in my exact look of how I wanted everything to look this year. And I wanted to do a transition out of the shot and close the doors, make it look like this is just the fridge lighting me, but there are 2 tube lights and C-stands holding the doors open. Filmmaking. MusicBed is the best music licensing platform for filmmakers, full stop. With over 40,000 songs to choose from, every genre and search tool you could imagine, I always find what I need when making short films, YouTube movies, and now documentaries. No matter what kind of films you're making, MusicBed will be a constant source of inspiration and drive for the emotions you'd like to convey. I'll always be one of their fiercest advocates because it's the longest standing service I've used in my creative career. If you'd like to get an account for yourself, use my code, all caps, EricFloberg22, to get a month off any annual subscription. Thank you for sponsoring this video, MusicBed. I like you a lot. No, I love you. Screen sucks. Super dark in daylight. If you up the brightness, it's fine, but the thing wobbles like crazy over time. Gets super loose, can't tighten it on your own, gotta send it in to get tightened again. Not ideal. You might be wondering why I'm doing dislikes in the mirror. I figured that'd be pretty self-explanatory. I don't like the fact that it's mini XLR, but I do know that that's a sacrifice to be made to have a smaller camera body, so it's fine. But from time to time, we are in a situation where we only have an XLR cable and I don't have the converter from mini XLR to XLR, so that's super annoying, but it's just one of the lots of life you have in a small camera body. If you always just keep that thing on your rig, it's not a problem. The ergonomics aren't the most ideal. It's like a big chunky DSLR like the 1DX Mark II, but it has more depth because it has that fan in the back. which isn't super conducive to building out like a cinema rig. Because you have that flip out screen, it's just kind of this hybrid situation. So it's not super ideal with putting a monitor on and a V-mount and that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, that's not really why I'm using this camera. I like it more for the run and gun aspects. But that is something that makes me want to have a more box style cinema camera in the future as an A cam that I can build out to be more of a cinema style situation. Lastly, straight out of box, the top handle is not ideal. Ergonomically, not my favorite. It's got like a sandpaper texture on the top of it. And the 2 screw mounts where they want you to put your microphone is just a terrible place for it. You have to like squeeze your hand in between the mic and the handle if you wanted to put it there. So I bought a cage from Condor Blue. I've talked about that in the past. It's also not my favorite. They talked about maybe changing it, but I might be going to Bright Tangerine in the future. Don't know yet.
Documentary. It's a small cinema camera with very reliable autofocus. It was great for doing a running documentary. Great sound with a condenser mic. I rely on the Rode NTG4 Plus. There's a mic limiter in the audio panels, which even if you have a hot track, it's recording really sensitively, it won't peak your audio. You could do dual tracks, you could do up to 4 tracks of audio. There's also pre-recording, which will do 2 seconds of recording before you even push the record button. There's time code and a multitude of reasonable codecs, including RAW, MP4, and XFAVC. Wedding. My go-to settings on this camera when I'm shooting weddings is its incredible 10-bit 422 in Log2 and MP4. Super manageable file sizes. You get to utilize the internal ND, so no screwing ND onto lenses. Using RF glass with stabilization is foolproof for handheld work, like the 15-35 that I always use, great for wedding and documentary work. Plus, it being such a small camera, it's just not that much to hold for the whole day. 4K 60 slow-mo and a multitude of other frame rates, and great scratch audio with preamps for, moments that happen throughout a wedding day. Commercial and narrative. It can hold up against other high-end cinema cameras with being such a small body. Canon claims it has 16 to 16 plus stops of dynamic range. In that raw codec, you are getting so much detail in the highlights and the shadows, especially with that DGO sensor.
Now, I normally don't care that much about gear, but the rumored Canon C200 Mark II gets me a little bit giddy. It's rumored to have the same exact DGO sensor as the C70 and the C300 Mark III, which means I'm gonna love the image again. It will most likely have the RF mount that the C70 does, but easier interchangeability between EF and PL if you want to, instead of just adapting off of RF. It's looking like it's probably gonna have more of a box style body like the C200 formerly did and the Red Komodo currently has, which lends itself to being built out like a cinema camera, as I mentioned earlier. That being a gripe of the C70, that solves that problem. I'm very hopeful that it'll have normal XLR like most cinema cameras do, and an SDI output for your monitor, which is going to be much more secure than the existing HDMI that exists on the C70. And given that all those rumors are true, I'm probably gonna go with that camera as my A camera, building it out with a monitor and V-mount batteries and all the bells and whistles, being my cinema camera, and the C70s will be my B and C camera. Given the fact that they have the same exact sensor, they'll match super well together. This camera has been a character in the movie of my life this year. Outside of being a functional piece of gear, it's given me the ability to extend my career past its comfortable enclosures. Having a cinema camera with these capabilities motivated me, reassured me, and confirmed that I could complete a project like this documentary with my friends. When my working career is behind me, I'll likely forget the name of the C70, but I'll remember all the footage I captured with it, all the experiences it allowed me to have, and the memories I gathered around it. Contrary to popular internet tropes, gear is important. We literally can't do what we do without it. And much like the people we surround ourselves with on set, it's a character in our lives. So make sure that character is something with which you're compatible, a friend that accompanies you, allowing you to make your dreams real.
Can you feel it now in the air?
We're so excited to share this movie with you. It looks like we're going to start premiering it in summer of 2023, so be on the lookout for that. If you want to know how we shot this entire video, all the BTS of it will exist on my Patreon. Go check it out, linked in the description as well. Thanks MusicBed for sponsoring the video. I love you.
That was a terrible idea.